They say healing begins the moment you stop pretending you're okay. For me, that moment came at 2:14 a.m. on a Thursday night. The baby was finally asleep. My body was sore. My chest ached, and the house was dead silent, except for the hum of the fridge and the soft creak of loneliness echoing through the hallway. He was gone. Still gone. Still hadn't come back, and I had stopped expecting him to that night. I sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in a hoodie that wasn't mine anymore, staring at a cold mug of tea I'd forgotten to drink. Something inside me, quietly, gently, broke free. I opened a blank notebook and I wrote, "Dear me, you survived." That sentence didn't feel like much at the time, but now, looking back, it was the first step towards something that felt a lot like coming home to myself. Every night after that, when the baby slept and the shadows came back, I wrote the things I never said to him. I wrote the pain I didn't let others see. I wrote the fear, the anger, the betrayal, and slowly, I started to write other things, too. Gratitude, hope, self-worth. It wasn't therapy, but it was something. Somewhere in the middle of page 37, I wrote a list titled, "Things I Thought I'd Never Do Again." One of them was laugh, but one Tuesday morning, as the baby made spit bubble noises and tried to put a sock on his head, I laughed. A real laugh. From my belly, and I cried right after, because I realized something. Joy was still possible. I started cooking again. Nothing fancy, just grilled cheese and soup, but it felt like reclaiming life. I played music while folding laundry. I danced, badly, but freely. I took long walks with the stroller and smiled at strangers. Not because I was healed, but because I was healing. And then one day, I met him. Not the old him, a new him. He was standing in line at the grocery store, fumbling with coupons and apologizing for accidentally bumping my cart. I didn't look for a spark. I wasn't ready for a fairy tale. But when he looked at my son and said, "Hey, buddy," like he'd already cared for him in another life, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. We didn't rush anything. He never tried to fix me. He just showed up, kindly, consistently, quietly. He learned the rhythm of our life. Midnight feedings, stroller walks, grocery runs. He never asked me to forget the past. He just helped me live despite it. I didn't fall in love like before. This time, it was slower, deeper, rooted. One night, I found my old notebook. I flipped to that first page. "Dear me, you survived." And beneath it, I wrote, "Dear me, you're finally living," because healing doesn't come all at once. It comes in pieces, in baby giggles, in warm grilled cheese, in walks under a cloudy sky, in a stranger's kindness, in writing down the truth, in choosing to try again. He left me while I was pregnant, but I stayed. I stayed with me, and now I'm still here, alive, healing, and finally whole. It had been nearly 4 years since I last stepped foot in that town. The road in looked the same, lined with the same wilting trees, the same faded signs, and the gas station with the flickering open sign that had always looked more like a warning than a welcome. I pulled into my childhood driveway slower than I expected, not because I was unsure, but because I could feel the memories rising before the wheels had even stopped. Mom passed 2 winters ago. The house had been sitting, quiet and waiting, the way grief tends to. I didn't come back then. I couldn't. Not with everything happening. Not with him leaving. Not while pregnant and alone and spiraling. But now, I was ready. I unbuckled my son. He was 3 now. All cheeks and questions. He held my hand as we walked toward the porch. And when I unlocked that door, 100 ghosts sighed through the hallway. The carpet was still that awful beige. The air still smelled faintly of cinnamon and dust. But what hit me hardest was the silence. I stood in the living room for a long time before moving. My son wandered toward the window and started playing with the curtain tassels. I watched him. Watched the way he moved like he belonged here, like he had no idea what this place had meant to me, or what I had lost here that night, after putting him to bed in the room that used to be mine. I found myself in the kitchen, hands resting on the old countertop, tears catching in the corner of my mouth. I whispered, "I forgive you, Mom." I hadn't planned to say it, but it came out, and once it did, something inside softened. There were more things I needed to say, more truths, buried in walls and wallpaper. But that was the first. That was the beginning of forgiving the woman who raised me in silence, who taught me to hold things in, to smile through the burn. I knew now. She was doing her best. I didn't blame her anymore. The morning after we arrived, I made pancakes in the same scratched-up pan Mom had used when I was little. The kitchen hadn't changed much. Same squeaky drawer, same humming refrigerator, same burnt coffee smell still lingering from who knows how many years ago. But something inside me had shifted. My son sat at the table with a crayon in his hand, drawing squiggly circles that he insisted were dinosaurs. I kissed the top of his head and whispered, "You're my favorite miracle." I heard the front door creak before I saw her shadow. "Hello," a voice called. Familiar. Hesitant, like it hadn't been sure it belonged here anymore. I turned. And there she was, Sophie, my sister. We hadn't spoken in over 6 years. She looked the same, but not really. Her hair was longer, darker, and tied back like she was trying to stay out of her own story. Her eyes, though still sharp, still sad, met mine with the weight of 100 unspoken things. "Hey," I managed. "Hey," she said back, voice almost cracking. Neither of us moved. My son broke the silence. "Mama, is that a friend?" Sophie smiled softly. "I hope so." She stepped inside. I poured her coffee before she asked, "That's how you say I miss you when words won't come?" We didn't talk about the years right away. We danced around them, talked about the weather, how tall my son was, the chip in the old tile floor. But eventually, we ran out of things to dodge behind. "I should have come to the funeral," she said, eyes fixed on her cup. "I should have called," I replied. I didn't know what to say. "Me neither." Silence settled between us. Not cold, not angry, just real. And then she said, "I heard what happened with him. I'm sorry." I looked at her, and for the first time I let someone else hold the weight with me. We talked for hours after that, about our childhood, about the way Mom used to hum when she cooked, about how we both carried pieces of pain in different shapes, and somewhere in the middle of it all, I realized I hadn't lost her. I'd just forgotten how to reach for her. That night, after she left, I sat on the porch with my son asleep upstairs. I stared at the stars and wrote in my notebook, "Dear me, some things aren't gone. They're just waiting to be opened again." 3 days later, I took my son to the grocery store. Just a regular errand. Just eggs, bread, milk. Just a moment in the middle of an ordinary life. But trauma doesn't care about ordinary. We were in aisle 6, my son humming beside me, when I reached for a box of cereal. Something about the brand, the label, the sound it made when it hit the cart. Suddenly, I was somewhere else entirely. I was back in that same aisle, nearly 4 years ago, when he first told me he didn't want to be a father. Same shelf, same cereal. He had said it so casually, like he was commenting on the weather. "I just don't think I can do this." And I had laughed, because I didn't believe him. Not then, in the present. The cereal box tumbled from my hands. My heart raced. My vision blurred. I couldn't breathe. My body felt like it was shrinking and expanding all at once. "Mama?" My son's voice cut through the fog. I crouched down, looked at him, forced a smile so he wouldn't worry, but the tears spilled anyway. A woman, a stranger, touched my shoulder. "Are you okay?" I nodded, lied. "I'm just tired." She helped me pick up the box. I thanked her. My son held my hand tighter than usual all the way to the car. That night, after he fell asleep, I opened-eyed the voice memo app on my phone. I didn't know why, but I hit record, and I whispered, "To my son, for someday, when you're old enough to wonder." Oh, my voice shook, but I kept going. "I want you to know it was never about you." The silence, the sadness, the way I'd stare out the window too long, or forget what I was saying mid-sentence. That was never your fault. You saved me. Just by being born, I was so scared, not of being your mom, but of not being enough. Your dad, he couldn't stay. And for a long time, I thought that meant I wasn't worthy of being loved. But you taught me otherwise. I stopped recording. I didn't listen back. Not yet, but someday. Maybe when he's 16 and asking hard questions, or 25 and holding his own baby, I'll play it for him, and he'll hear the truth, that he was never the reason I broke. He was the reason I rebuilt. That weekend, I found the notebook again, the one I started the night he left. It was dog-eared now, full of messy ink and pages warped from quiet tears. I sat at the kitchen table, my son asleep upstairs, the old house humming with memory, and I did something I hadn't done since the very beginning. I turned to a fresh page, and I wrote, "To my son, when you turn 5, it pours out of me. All the things I wished someone had told me at that age. All the hope I had for his tiny, curious soul. I told him about the way he laughs when he runs, and how that sound rebuilds worlds I thought were lost. I wrote about kindness, about mistakes, about how sometimes bravery looks like brushing your teeth when all you want to do is cry. When I finished, I dated the letter, folded it, slipped it into a small envelope, and wrote a year on the front. Then I wrote another, to my son, on your 10th birthday. This one was harder, because I imagined him older, asking harder questions. I imagined his eyes, like mine, but brighter, searching for meaning in a world that won't always be gentle. I told him that life won't always make sense, that sometimes people leave, and it has nothing to do with how lovable we are. I told him that pain is a teacher, but it's never the whole story. Letter by letter, I kept going. 12, 15, 18, I told him about love, about his dad, without bitterness, but with truth, about healing, about the sacred power of starting again. Each letter ended the same way. I love you more than the first morning sun after the darkest night, and I always will. I placed them in a box, tied it with string, and labeled it, for you, when you're ready, because he would be someday. And when that day came, I wanted him to know, truly know, that even in my brokenness, I was building a bridge back to him, one word at a time. It came on a Wednesday afternoon. A number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. But something in me, curious or brave, or just tired of running, answered. Hello. Silence. Then a breath. Then his voice. Hey, it's me. And just like that, I was 25 again. Pregnant. Alone. Sitting on the floor of our old apartment, holding a positive test and waiting for him to come home. I didn't say anything. Not right away, he said. I heard you moved back. I still didn't respond. I don't know. I wanted to see how you were. How he was. My hand tightened around the edge of the kitchen counter. My heart didn't race. My knees didn't shake. I wasn't scared of him anymore. I said, he's good. He's happy. A pause. Then, that's good. I think about him all the time. I didn't ask him why he left. I didn't need to anymore. I'd carried that question like a wound for too long. And suddenly I realized I wasn't bleeding from it anymore. I asked instead, why now? His voice cracked. Because I saw a photo online. Someone posted a picture of you two at the park. I didn't recognize him. I mean, he's not a baby anymore. And it broke me. I breathed. Slowly, steadily. I wasn't sure what I felt. Grief. Maybe. But not because he called, because I'd already said goodbye long ago. And this call was only proof I'd survived. You left, I said. And we didn't stop living. I know, he whispered. I didn't offer him forgiveness. Not out loud, but I did say, he deserves to know he's enough. Always. I know, he said again. I didn't hang up. I didn't cry. I simply let the silence settle between us, like dust in sunlight. And then, quietly, I ended the call. That night, I wrote in the notebook, "Closure doesn't come from their words. It comes from the way you no longer need them." It happened during a rainstorm. We were in the living room, curled under a blanket, watching the sky pour itself into the earth. My son, now nearly 5, rested his chin on my shoulder as thunder rumbled in the distance. "Mama," he whispered, "do I have a dad?" I froze, not because I didn't expect the question, but because I didn't know it would arrive so gently, so innocently, so full of hope. I turned to face him, his eyes, wide and waiting, were searching for something simple, a name, a story, a shape to fit into the space he was beginning to sense was empty. I took a deep breath. "Yes, sweetheart," I said. "You do. Where is he?" I held his tiny hand in mine and let the silence hang for a moment before answering. "He isn't here, but that doesn't mean you're missing anything." He thought about that, nodded slowly. "Did he meet me when I was a baby?" I smiled, soft and sad. "No. Love. He didn't." "Did he love me?" My throat tightened. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to give him the gift of that belief, but I had promised myself no lies. "I don't think he knew how to love yet," I said. "But that had nothing to do with you. You've always deserved all the love in the world." He nodded again, this time more certain. "Okay," he said. And then, "Can I have more chocolate milk?" I laughed through tears, because that's what being a mother feels like sometimes. Breaking open, then pouring another cup. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "The truth doesn't have to hurt when it's wrapped in love." His 5th birthday was coming, and I was terrified, not because he was growing up too fast, though he was, or because I didn't have enough money for a fancy party, though I didn't. I was scared because it would be the first birthday I had to face as a full, chosen celebration. No grief to hide behind, no chaos to distract me, just a day. A cake, a boy, and a new man in our lives who had never missed a moment since the day he met us. I baked the cake from scratch, vanilla, with strawberries inside, because he once told me strawberries felt like happiness on his tongue. The morning of his birthday, he came running into my room with wide eyes and bedhead and shouted, "I'm 5!" Like he'd been waiting his whole life to say it. We decorated the porch with balloons and mismatched streamers. The new man, his name was Liam, built a cardboard rocket ship out of old boxes and duct tape, and the kids played astronauts all afternoon. There was laughter, lots of it, and then, during cake, my son looked at me and said, "Mama, this is the best day ever." I couldn't speak, because it was the first time I let the joy in without checking for cracks. That night, after all the guests left, and the candles were blown out, and Liam was helping me gather paper plates, my son came and hugged me, sticky and exhausted. "Thank you," he whispered, "for loving me so big." And I whispered back, "Always." When he fell asleep that night, Liam found me in the kitchen, I was washing dishes slowly, smiling to myself. He walked over, dried a plate, and said, "You did it." I looked at him. "No," I said. "We did." Then I wrote in my notebook, "Joy is not the absence of pain. It's the courage to feel again." It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. No fireworks, no dramatic turning point. Just a mirror, a quiet moment, and the woman staring back at me. I had dropped my son off at preschool. Liam was at work. The house was finally still. I walked into the bathroom to wash my face and caught my reflection unexpectedly, and I stopped for the first time in years. I really looked, not at the dark circles or the laugh lines, not at the soft curve of healing weight, or the way my shoulders no longer sagged with shame. I saw a woman, a whole one, a woman who had survived heartbreak and postpartum and panic attacks in aisle 6. A woman who had built a life with a baby on one hip and pain in the other. A woman who tuned in to love again, not because she had to, but because she could. I smiled. It felt real. Later that day, I put on a dress I hadn't worn in years. Not for anyone else, not for a date or an event, just for me. I wore it to the grocery store. I wore it while I cooked dinner. I wore it while dancing with my son in the living room to some old song I used to love. And that night, when I tucked him in, he said, "You look happy today, Mama." I kissed his forehead. "I am," because I saw her again. Me. And she wasn't lost after all. She was just waiting for me to come back. That night I wrote in my notebook. I didn't just rebuild my life. I returned to it. It was a Sunday afternoon. Nothing special. The sky was overcast. The wind whispered through the trees, like it had secrets it didn't want to keep. Liam and I were sitting on the back porch, watching my son chase bubbles across the yard. I had just poured us lemonade. He took his glass, then reached into his pocket. "Hey," he said. I looked up. He was kneeling. There was no crowd, no violin quartet, no dramatic music swelling in the background. Just him, just me, just the quiet truth hanging in the air between us. "I know your heart's been through hell," he said, voice soft. "But if there's even the smallest part of it that wants to build a future with me, I'll spend my life proving it's safe now." My breath caught. Not from surprise, but from the way those words wrapped around all my broken places and didn't try to fix them, just held them. I didn't cry. I didn't even look at the ring. I looked at my son. He was standing near the lilac bush, staring at us with wide, hopeful eyes. I smiled, and I said, "Yes," not because I was healed, but because I was ready to keep healing, with someone who knew the difference. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "Love doesn't rescue you, but it walks beside you while you rescue yourself." After the proposal, after the cake and the lilacs and the tears, I didn't cry. Something stirred inside me. Not grief, not fear, but memory. I found myself drawn back to that first entry in my notebook again. "Dear me, you survived." And suddenly, I wanted to talk to her, to the woman I was the night he left. So I wrote her a letter, not for therapy, not for closure, but for reverence, for the girl who stayed up all night, crying into silence, For the woman who carried a baby in her belly and a broken heart in her hands. For the version of me who thought she'd never smile again. I wrote, "Dear me, you won't believe where you end up. Right now, you're probably curled up on the bathroom floor, wondering how to do this alone. You're thinking it's your fault, that if you were prettier, quieter, stronger, less emotional, more forgiving. He might have stayed, but I'm here to tell you. He left because he couldn't love you the way you deserved. And deep down, you knew that. You'll be tired for a long time. You'll second-guess yourself. You'll hate the silence. And yes, there will be nights you'll stare out the window and wonder if you made a mistake keeping the baby. But he will be your light, your reason, your teacher. You will laugh again. You will fall in love again. Not recklessly, not urgently, but deeply. You will come home to yourself. And one day, you'll look in the mirror and not see what he left behind, but what you chose to become. I am so proud of you. Thank you for not giving up. Love, me." When I finished, I folded the letter, slid it into the back pocket of the notebook. It didn't erase the past, but it honored it. And sometimes, that's all healing really is. A letter to the version of you that didn't know she'd survive. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't nerves. Not really. It was something deeper. Something that hummed under my skin, like the memory of a long-forgotten lullaby. Liam was at his brother's house, giving me space. My son, our son, had fallen asleep hours earlier after insisting on helping me pack my shoes and then sneaking frosting from the edge of the wedding cake. The house was quiet. I walked barefoot across the wooden floors, listening to their creaks and whispers. I ended up in the kitchen. Again. Always the kitchen, and made tea I wouldn't finish. Then I pulled out the notebook. It was thicker now. Worn. Pages spilling out like layers of my life, folded in on each other. I flipped through it slowly, reading fragments, a line here, a letter there, and I realized this wasn't a story of being left. It was a story of choosing to stay. With myself, I took out a blank page, and I wrote, "Dear Tomorrow, I'm not walking down the aisle to be rescued. I'm walking towards someone who met me in my wilderness and never asked me to be smaller. I'm marrying the man who learned the lullaby of my life and sang it back to me without asking me to change the melody. This isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a chapter I wrote with my own healing hands. And I am ready. Not perfect, not painless, but present. I'll say yes, not because I need him, but because I finally want to build something with someone who never made me feel like a burden. Love, me." I closed the notebook, went upstairs, kissed my son on the forehead, and fell asleep. Softly, slowly, with a heart that no longer trembled at the thought of tomorrow. The wedding was small, intimate, backyard chairs and string lights. My sister helped with the flowers. My son dropped rose petals with a grin so wide it made the sun look dim. Liam cried when he saw me. Not dramatically yet, just one quiet tear. The kind of tear men like him only shed when something holy is happening. We said our vows under the lilac tree, and then it was done. I was married, not rescued, not completed, just loved, chosen. Later that evening, when guests were gone and candles flickered their final dances, I found my son in the hallway. Sleepy-eyed and full of sugar, he tugged on my dress.
Hey, Mama.
I bent down. Yes, baby. He leaned into me, lips close to my ear. I know Liam's not my real dad, but can I call him Daddy now? My heart stuttered. I looked into his eyes. You can call him whatever feels true to you. He nodded. Then he ran off, barefoot and bold, yelling. Daddy, come see my room again. Liam looked at me, eyes wide, soft, and in that moment, I didn't cry. I simply breathed in the sacredness of a title earned, not given. That night, I wrote in my notebook, the most beautiful things in life are chosen twice, once by us, once by them. It wasn't planned. We were in the park on a Sunday afternoon. The air smelled like grass and lemonade, and my son had just finished chasing butterflies with the same determination he used to build Lego towers. Liam and I were sprawled on the picnic blanket, sun-kissed and laughing, while our son piled dandelions into a little crown. An older couple passed by and smiled. The woman paused and said, "Would you like me to take a photo of the three of you?" I hesitated, not because I didn't want it, but because some part of me still flinched at the word family. Still wasn't used to claiming it out loud, but Liam smiled. "Let's do it," he said, reaching for my hand. We gathered close, Liam's arm around my shoulder, our son between us, still wearing the dandelion crown like it was made of gold. The woman counted. 1, 2, 3. And in that moment, we all smiled. Not the kind you practice, the kind that rises naturally when you know you're safe. She showed me the picture after, and I couldn't stop staring at it. There we were, a woman who had been left, a man who stayed, and a boy who brought them both to life. We weren't perfect, but we were whole. That night, I printed the photo. I taped it inside the back cover of my notebook, the same one where it all began, and underneath it, I wrote, "This is what healing looks like." I never meant to fill the whole notebook, but one evening, while folding laundry and humming some lullaby my mother once sang, I flipped to the back and realized there were no more blank pages, just the photo, the one with me, Liam, and our son. All sunlight and softness, I sat down at the kitchen table, the same one where this story began. I laid my hand on the cover of the notebook. It felt warm from the day's light, and I smiled because for the first time, I wasn't writing from pain. I wasn't reaching for a rope in the dark. I wasn't bleeding through my pen. I was simply full of memory, of truth, of grace. So I opened to the final inside cover, and with a deep breath, I wrote, "Dear me, this is not the end. This is the beginning of a life you built with trembling hands and an unbreakable heart. You were never too much. You were never too broken. You were always becoming. Every night you cried beside a sleeping child. Every morning you woke up and chose to rise. Every word you wrote, every meal you made, every small joy you let in again." That was love, that was healing, and that was you. So, if you ever forget, If the shadows ever whisper again that you were not enough, open this notebook, read your own words, and remember, you made it. You made a life, you made a home, you made a boy feel safe, you made love grow again, and above all, you made yourself whole with every breath, every step, every page. Love forever. Me, I closed the notebook, placed it on the shelf beside a framed photo of us three, and walked away, hand in hand, with the life I never thought I'd get to live.